What's up, you YouTubers? It's your host, Keandre. Now, before I get to the video, I want to just first give thanks to everybody who has come down here in Southeast Texas and Corpus Christi, helping us out. Some people really need the help. Thank you from everybody who came down from Louisiana to bring down boats to help rescue people. You guys are a really big miracle right now to us. And I hope that people who are suffering right now, whether their home was damaged, car damaged, or they basically have no other place to go to evacuate to, I hope that you guys can find some type of shelter, whether it be some regular shelter or anywhere. I hope you guys can find some type of safe place to go to temporarily and get back to your daily lives and just be happy. Once again, I hope this storm doesn't turn out to be a continuous thing for the whole week, as they're saying. I really hope something weird happens and it just stops everything. Right now, things seem to be a little less chilled. Not much raining right now. A little windy, but who knows? That stuff can probably come right back in like the next 5 minutes. So for the video, this is basically like a part 2 to the video that I made yesterday about the whole flooding issues here in Houston. Today I wanted to go more into detail and to also offer some solutions to our flooding issues in Houston, because I personally believe that it is a shame that nobody has wanted to make this big mission to improve the infrastructure of Houston. Well, I'm going to talk about that later on in the video. First things first, though, I want to explain this map over here that I added. This wasn't here yesterday. This right here is an elevation map. This shows you the current elevations of the different areas around the greater Houston area. Areas in white, these are your really low elevation areas. This is by the Galveston Bay, so that would make sense since that's at sea level. And then this white color you see over here, this is really yellow. The reason why it looks white is because I printed it in black and ink. So that's why. And then as you go further up north and get darker, these are going to be your areas where you have higher elevation. So that's just a little brief explanation of this. Not only that, but I also wanted to label some of the major waterways that we have here in the Houston area. The most one that people are familiar with is the Buffalo Bayou. The Buffalo Bayou starts somewhere out here past the Addicts and Barker Reservoir, and it goes right to those reservoirs and then crosses over I-10 and then goes back east, and it goes through the inner parts of Houston, through downtown Houston, which is where Houston was originally settled at. And then after it passes Houston, it turns into the Houston Ship Channel, where you have the Port of Houston and all those oil refineries. And that eventually leads into the Galveston Bay, right over here. And then east of Houston, you have a river known as the San Jacinto River. Now, the San Jacinto River is splitted at the top once you go up north from Lake Houston. You have the West Fork San Jacinto River, and you have the East Fork San Jacinto River, which is right up north from the Lake Houston area. And West San Jacinto River, that connects Lake Conroe to Lake Houston. And right now, they are going through some big problems as far as flooding, because Lake Conroe is overflowed with a whole bunch of water. And so, because it's a reservoir, they open up the levees to get rid of some of that water, and that water is just gushing down the West Fork of the San Jacinto River. And a lot of areas out by Lake Houston, Kingwood, Humboldt, that whole area by the 59 freeway, they're getting completely flooded out. As a matter of fact, it was just on the news that they want people out in that area to, go ahead and evacuate and get the heck up out of there. Because even the 59 freeway, which goes through northeast Houston, that's starting to become flooded as well. So if you're still out in that area, please find at least a safe place to be where you're not going to be affected by the flooding if you can't go anywhere else. This is just important news. Now that I basically gave you guys a rough idea of what the waterways look like, also before I forget, you also have the Cypress Creek, which is a major waterway in northern Houston. It connects northwest Houston to Lake Houston, and this creek over here, it really floods badly once you get these big storms because it has a whole bunch of tributaries, which are just other small rivers that connects the creek as it goes on to Lake Houston. And so it's looking pretty bad along the floodplain for Cypress Creek right now as well. And so now that I talked about all the waterways, I want to talk about some of the reservoirs. I talked a little bit about Lake Houston. Lake Houston is also a reservoir as well. And Lake Houston stays to its full capacity year round. So rarely does it dip. As a matter of fact, it stays above its full capacity year round, just to make extra note. And then down here, you have the Addison Barker Reservoir, which worked effectively in the past, but as of right now, times have changed. Houston is much bigger than it once was when these two reservoirs were built, which was in the 1940s, I believe, by the Army Corps Engineers. And so whatever they did for whatever intentions they had, which was to prevent downstream flooding, it worked then. But because Houston is spreading out and getting out towards the suburbs, further out west, you now have these two reservoirs completely surrounded by urban areas. So when you have water overflowing in these reservoirs, that water could just gush out to these surrounding neighborhoods and other communities. And that's not a bad sight at all. As a matter of fact, I think that's going on right now. They already opened up the levees, but the water is just coming down at very fast rates. And really anything south of Katy right now, it's getting some pretty bad rain and the whole deal, just to say the least. But a negative result of having these reservoirs out here, aside from the fact that these reservoirs can flood the surrounding communities around it, when you open up these levees, that water is going to come gushing down at high velocity, and it's going to go down Buffalo Bayou through these really dense parts of Houston within the 610 inner loop, and it's going to flood those communities, and that's already happened, I think, since yesterday. And so if you look at those pictures of the inner parts of Houston, you see how badly flooded it is, specifically around the Buffalo Bayou area, because all that water has just been rushing down really fast. Now, I wanted to talk about some solutions to this infrastructure problem that we have here in Houston. It's a very bad thing or bad situation we have going on. But before I talk about solutions, I wanted to also address this misconception about the floodplains here in the Houston area. Now here on the map, you have a floodplain map of Houston. Areas in blue are what you call the 100-year floodplains. And the areas in the turquoise color, it's like a greener color or something. This is what you would call a 500-year floodplain. The orange areas is just a 100-year coastal floodplain, but I'm not going to talk about that in this video. But what people fail to realize what those terms mean is that when you have a 100-year floodplain, that basically means that you have a 1% chance of that floodplain flooding in any given year within that 100-year period. It does not necessarily mean that it's going to flood one time during that 100 years. But as a matter of fact, if you use this one formula, it's known as probability exceedance. And probability exceedance is used when you want to determine how much can you exceed the limit of that probability or the chance of something happening. And it's basically set up by using 1 minus the brackets, 1 minus parentheses within the brackets of 1 divided by t, parentheses bracket, and then n, which is like a power. Now t is basically the amount of years within that period you're talking about. And so for this example, we're going to use the 100-year floodplain. So in a 100-year floodplain, you're talking about 100 years, so that'll go to t. And n is basically the period you're talking about. So if it's known as a 100-year floodplain period, you're just going to put 100 up there. And when you work it out into a calculator, let me get my little thing out, my sweet graphing calculator, oops. You just do 1 minus what I just said, and then parenthesis, 1 minus parenthesis, 1 divided by 100, and then up
That's 100.
And you should get something like 0.63396. I don't know if y'all can see that. It's kind of a distance away, but I wrote it up here. And what that basically means is that you have a 63% chance of it flooding one time or more than once within that 100 years that you're talking about. And you can do the same thing for 500-year floodplains if you want to know how much it could exceed that limit. In which 500-year plains, it's a little different because in 500-year plains, that means you have a 0.2% chance of it flooding in any given year within that 500 years. So that's just something to also address so that people will stop being confused and stuff. Now, on to the solutions. Now, I did not feel like it would be a complete video or a complete thought without me giving solutions, even after me complaining about the improvement of infrastructure or whatnot. So, what I was thinking, me personally, I think that we should not make every single waterway directly or indirectly flow to the Galveston Bay. Because a lot of times what you have taking place is you have water gushing down at high velocity, and that water's just going to come whooping down, and then you never know what can happen as a result. You got some drastic results of that. So, as an alternative to the Galveston Bay, something that we could probably also take advantage of is maybe even the Matagorda Bay. Now, the problem with the Matagorda Bay is like 100 miles southwest of us, like it going towards Corpus Christi. So distance can be a problem, but it's definitely something that we can probably consider at this time and day. Not only that, but I was also thinking about what I had mentioned yesterday about the eastern rural parts of Houston. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, this whole area of East Houston is all swampy, grassland, wetlands. That's all it is over here. Not very much developed at all. So what we can do over here is we can have like some really nice artificial wetland that could be used to clean the water and be used by the natural environment without having to do anything to urban. A way we could get water to come down to this artificial wetlands, probably having like another bayou, but from Lake Houston, because I know Lake Houston stays full of water year round. So I know we could get plenty of water from here anytime we get even the slightest storms ever, and then have it transported over here. Even over here, we got some little waterway pipes to come connect the artificial wetland over there. But yeah, that's basically what I wanted to hit on for this video. The improvement of infrastructure here in Houston, using other water sources, and then using natural environments for their advantage. But also to go back to the whole year floodplain thing, what people really also don't understand is that this is only probability right here. It's not statistical data. It's not based off of statistical data. So in other words, it may say 100-year floodplain, but it could be worse than that. There's a lot of areas in Houston where you have a 100-year floodplain or 500-year floodplain, and it's really a 1,000-year floodplain because we've been having this issue of flooding for like the past 2 years or so. Every year for the past 2 years, it's been like some type of flooding issue. But I just wanted to go ahead and enlighten you guys on what's going on to the best way I can with the best details. And I hope you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.